Hi everyone. So today I'm really lucky to be joined by two mums. They have children who basically identified into trans identities in their teenage years. And they've now on this sort of precipice of getting thrown into the adult gender services. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to get them together and to have a bit of a conversation about what their shared experiences were, basically. So I've got Anna and I've got Evie here today. So you're both very welcome. And I'm really pleased that you came along to have a bit of a blether.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sorry. We'll do our best with the whole behind the screen as well, because sometimes we obviously won't know when you start speaking. So let's start with you, Anna. And
Yeah.
obviously some people may know you because you were trying to take a judicial review and you had a crowdfunder case. So we'll have a bit of a conversation about that as well. But start us off at the beginning about how this started within your family and how your daughter got into kind of genderology religion.
Lockdown. So she was fine, completely just into everything, didn't care about who she just was her and unapologetically her. And then lockdown happened. Just before lockdown, she came out and said she was a lesbian, and then that changed to bi. So um obviously she was, I think, 13 or 14 possibly then. Um so that was in the January, and then my dad died in the February, and then we buried him in March, and then it was lockdown, literally the week after we buried him.
Wow.
Obviously, we were told to use the internet a lot,
Yeah.
um, and there was a lot of encouragement for everyone to keep in contact with each other and just not kind of lose touch and become too isolated and
Mm.
all of that. So I think just like a lot of parents did, we just kind of let go of the restrictions on the internet as much.
Well, they were doing homeschooling as well, weren't they, on the internet? So,
Yeah, there was a lot of homeschooling. So I had, I've got 5 kids, so obviously I had to juggle with all of their online. I think it was 3 different curriculums I was having to kind of figure out. Um, and with her being the eldest, she was kind of able to do her own work most of the time. Um, but she was already on Discord a little bit, and it was just a small circle of friends, mostly from her school.
mm.
Um, Gradually, it kind of all the kids from the local schools started to join in with the Discord server that they were in, because it was kids adding their close friends, more adding their close friends. It just became one bigger group.
Mm.
Um, there was one girl from a local school who said she was non-binary, I think at the time. And I think a boy at my daughter's school knew her, so had added her. This sort of thing has happened, from what I can gather. Um, and then it turned out that the boy who my daughter was friends with started to identify as a girl, and I didn't know about that straight away. After the first, or near the end of the first lockdown, my daughter came and told us that she wanted to be a boy, and I didn't really think too much of it at the time. I just thought, okay, this has got to be a phase. I was like, okay.
Mm.
Um, it wasn't until later on that I realized how serious these children are about this.
Mm.
Uh, I thought it was all kind of a load of rubbish, basically, and just a way for kids to kind of express themselves and experiment with different looks and stuff like that. But I didn't think the label was such a serious thing.
And finding your personality, etc. Because
Yeah.
obviously, one of the other reasons we know each other is from our kind of work on autism. So was that a kind of factor for her as well?
She's got ADHD.
Right,
She's been tested for autism, but she doesn't meet the full criteria. She's got traits.
right.
But there is obviously overlap because I'm autistic. I've got two autistic kids, and I can kind of see a lot of commonalities. Um, the social side of things is probably the biggest one. She's always struggled with friendships up until lockdown. She hadn't had a continuous kind of friendship, like a quality friendship.
Right.
Um,
So when she got into this group, do you think that was another sort of facet that kind of brought-
Definitely.
right?
It was a there's no kind of no judgment. Like, it's what you'd want in a friendship.
Mm.
They offer everything that you want in a friendship, but it's not actually there. It's just perceived.
And was she feeling
Um,
okay? I mean, obviously you'd had this family bereavement, which must have been really difficult. Was she sort of otherwise quite stable and feeling sort of happy, or were there other issues going on?
this is the whole thing as well. She's had a lot of trauma. When she was 3, we left a violent relationship. I left a violent relationship that she had suffered directly through. Um, and then when she was for her 5th birthday, her biological dad stopped seeing her. She never kind of got any kind of quality dad time from him. Um, I think being let down by men is a big issue
That's all right.
in all of this.
Mm.
Um, and I think her experiences of men plays a big part.
Mm.
And I think it was kind of an escape for her
So did
as
she
well
want to,
as
did
everything
she,
else.
so did she ask to be referred into gender services or to get help for this, or did she
She
transition?
didn't,
Or,
no, she socially transitioned, well, sort of she shaved her head straight away, basically. And then so she didn't want to wear any of her clothes. So what I did, I went and because I didn't know what to do. All I'd seen on the internet at that time was suicide. Um, you have to affirm her.
yeah,
And I was like, I don't feel too comfortable with that, but I don't mind making some kind of
gender,
compromises.
right. What did the school do? Were they, did they get on board with it? Or were they supportive, or did they,
The
change?
school that she was at the time, I told them what was going on, and I actually asked them, could they be um, accommodating towards her
Right,
because that's the place that I was in as well, so it's my fault as well.
right.
Um, and they were accommodating, and then as the whole Kira Bell case and everything came out and stuff, I realized like I wasn't alone in my kind of hesitations.
Right.
Um,
You had a bit of an enlightening experience, and
yeah, it,
right.
it was like I ended up down a massive rabbit hole. It was around then that we had appointment with CAMS as well, and she got referred to the Tavistock because she was their first case at that CAMS of a child who said that they're not the sex they are.
Hmm.
They didn't know what else to do, didn't know how to deal with it. Uh, then we had the cash review and everything come out. When
Hmm.
that happened, I emailed the school straight away. I was like, no, we need to we
You
need to stop
hold
this.
back up a bit, yeah.
Yeah. But by that point, she had been getting into trouble for going into the boys' toilet. So I do rate the school she was at because
Yeah.
they were on the ball about things, and I think they were trying to keep me sweet more than anything.
Mhm.
Um, which is obviously quite dangerous.
Mm.
I think schools need to know their stuff and actually say, well, have you read this? Or like point parents in the right direction because we don't know what we're doing.
Did they have other
And
children that they had as well that they were?
only that boy who she was friends with.
So what happened when you got to GIDS? When you got to the gender service clinic, how did
We
they?
haven't actually gone through with that yet. We got the letter saying that she was on the list and we haven't heard anything back. But because I left my ex last year and she stayed with him, I don't know if she ended up getting any letters. But as far as I know, he hasn't, my ex didn't change the doctor's surgery for her. So they'll only have our old address.
Right.
So it's kind of, I can't move her to where I am because she's not here.
Right.
Um,
Well, I mean,
but she should have been,
probably what would have happened is because she was 16, 17 on that sort of transition, they would have bounced her straight off into the adult services anyway.
yeah.
Maybe we can kind of come back to that when we talk to Evie as well. But you then got into the situation about taking this case and this judicial review. How did that?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was told about it in Bayswater support group.
Yeah,
Um,
you're amazing.
and yeah, they are. And they mentioned that there was hope for a legal case, and they mentioned the criteria for it. And I think a few people might have attempted to go for it, but didn't meet all the criteria or something. And me and Ms. C both did. So it's just ended up with it being us.
Right.
But yeah, so we're hoping to make it so that the adult service specifications go consistently from the children's specifications, especially with everything that Cass is wanting to put into children's services. Adults, they don't seem to have any kind of multidisciplinary work going on inside there. There's no, we know that autistic kids and youth and any other kids with vulnerabilities aren't being seen or having those issues dealt with alongside. And that's just what we want to happen because it's disability discrimination, in my opinion, otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I can explain some of it from my perspective because I took part in the consultation process as well. I mean, some of the kind of background to it in terms of the cast review as well was, a lot of people have been very concerned about this lack of crossover. Because obviously what we know is that a lot of these youngsters have got all these comorbidities, autism and mental health problems and suicidality and cutting and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
And basically what's happening is that they're being bounced straight from children's services where they're able to get psychological support, etc. And as soon as they become to the 16-ish, 17 point, they then get bounced straight into the adult services, which obviously it doesn't give them psychological support. And then after about two meetings, perhaps, they will be offered gender affirming care. And what a lot of people asked for was that there would be a bridge from 17 to 25, given that we know that brain development in adolescence is, takes some time up to the age of 25 to be fully
yeah,
formed. But essentially that didn't happen. And that was one of the things that multiple different organisations asked for within the consultation process. But there have also been various changes that took place regarding the setup of the commissioning. And I can see just reading your case from
the update.
the update that they posted. It basically is the point is, my opinion is that the current NHS service specifications do not provide an adequate degree of protection and are likely to have a disproportionately adverse effect on those who suffer from coexisting mental health conditions or those who have additional clinical needs, which is basically what I just said. Permitting coexisting clinical needs to be left unaddressed could result in serious harm with lifelong consequences for this cohort. And the reason I read that specifically, even though it was similar to what I just said, is that this is actually a doctor's advice that you've got, which is which is the foundation of the appeal that you're taking within this case, because basically you were denied the reason for your appeal within the case that was taken recently. I mean, one of the things that I found it very frustrating as I've watched your case go along on Twitter, and you've tried to raise funds for it, is how poorly it's been supported
Yeah.
financially.
I mean, I did get an email from the solicitor this morning about the amount from when it was on Democracy Free.
Right.
And it says the payout amount was 9,166.23 pence.
Right.
Um,
And
and
this one here says you've got 4,000 on a stretch target of 50,000.
yeah, that's on the crowd justice one.
Yeah, reading.
Um,
But given that people can raise hundreds of thousands of pounds, overnight for very small things, it's been sad to watch that something which was actually been incredibly important with regard to
yeah,
children.
it's disheartening. Um, but I am hoping that if we can get the appeal going and a bit more kind of traction on it, that we can kind of go a bit harder on the promoting it and trying to get donations.
Get people get a buzz going about it again. Well,
Yeah.
let's come back. Let's come back to that once let's bring Evie in and can you tell us a little bit about, because I know that there are some similarities here. Tell us a bit about your story, Evie.
Hi there. I'm so sorry to hear about what's been going on for you, Anna. It's just listening to it, it's very similar to my story, and it's giving me palpitations. How did this start for us? Basically, my eldest went into high school in August 2019. She'd come from a primary school where, because of her autism, we think she had no friends. She had no friend group. She was never invited to any parties. She was never, she was just completely left out all the time. So when she went to high school, she went into the hall when they pick their after school stuffs and their clubs and their things. She saw the rainbow flag and she just headed straight there.
God.
Her reason was, I really like the colours on the flag. So when she joined the Pride Club, she had an already made friend group of awkward, autistic, geeky kids that took her in the fold. They brought her in, and at that time we were quite pleased because she was making friends. She seemed to be enjoying school. She was participating in things. She was just, everything seemed okay. We had no problem, obviously, because we had no inkling of what was about to happen. So we had no problem with her joining the club. We were supportive. She was coming home talking of all these different genders. She started off by saying she was lesbian, and then she was gay, and then she was bisexual, and then she was non-binary. And that stuck for a very long time. She said she was they, them. And we were, every time she would come out with one proclamation, we would be supportive. We wouldn't be, we wouldn't be mean about it. We wouldn't be denigrating or anything. We would just be trying to support what she was exploring, her identity. And we would say to her, these things are changeable. You're young. She was only like 11 or 12 at the time.
Wow.
You just need, you need to give yourself time. You need to.
Yeah, she was just exploring who she was.
So at the same time, unbeknownst to us, my middle, who was in primary 6, that's when they started the new RSHP. So she was being told that sex was assigned at birth, and that it's possible to be born in the wrong body, and that little boys can be little girls with a penis, and all this complicated, confusing stuff. And she was only like 10 at the time. So they were both being attacked from all angles. So this went on for months and months. And then suddenly things took a bit of a worrying turn. They started self-harming. They started being really secretive. That, you know, we barely saw them. They were in their rooms, and, you know, things just went tits up basically, and we didn't quite know why or what was going on. And I got hold of my middle's phone at one point, and she'd written this thing saying, "I want to be a boy." So we knew that things were not as great as they appeared to be for them. So we got in touch with CAMS for a mental health risk assessment, because they were both talking about, you know, suicide. They were both self-harming.
Are they doing it together?
Well, together, separately, I don't know that. They were both like in their own worlds of pain and their own worlds of confusion. I don't know that they were colluding with the self-harming. I don't know that if either of them knew until it all like blew up. I don't know, because also that was when lockdown started. We were just about to start with some educational psychologist was going to see our middle. And the day before lockdown, she says, "Oh, we don't deal with self-harm. We only deal with educational stuff." And we were like, "Well, it's affecting her education. It's affecting her. Is there nothing you can do?" And they were basically about to say, "No, there's nothing we can do. Go away." And then lockdown happened. So they ended up, like Anna said, 24/7 online. And we know now that there was all that TikTok and YouTube and all this glamorization of trans ideology that we obviously didn't know anything about. So they were being bombarded with that, basically being told that they're born in the wrong body and their difficult feelings were because of that. When in actual fact, and I didn't know this, that going through puberty for autistic children is really, really difficult. It's a really difficult and completely different experience. To an already normal puberty is not easy, is it? I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare, but apparently for autistic kids it's even worse, which we didn't know about at the time. So we had these mental health risk assessments at CAMS. CAMS offered our eldest an anxiety workshop, which she did, complained about incessantly and did nothing. She never looked at any of the paperwork, never really took on board anything that she was told. They told us our middle was not, what was the word they used? Like, not deemed unwell enough to get any help from CAMS, even though she was kind of in a worse state, I think, of confusion and self-harming. Anyway, we were then offered family therapy through CAMS. We tried to do it through lockdown when it was online, and it was really difficult because of connection problems, and it just didn't quite work. So we eventually were allowed to go in and speak. So we entered into this really in-depth, long-term therapeutic relationship with one of the therapists at CAMS, who also ended up giving therapy to our eldest in a separate like occasions. But we were told that, you know, we were working towards all the kids and us like having therapy together and being able to discuss things, and they were going to help us with communication, because during that time, obviously there was a lot of backlash. We would try and talk to them about, you know, reality and how, you know, it wasn't possible for them to become boys, and that, you know, they were still young and they just needed to get through puberty. And you know, we empathized. It was a difficult time, and we understood, and, you know, we talked to them loads, and basically we got like nothing back from them. They basically would shut down. They wouldn't respond or anything. And when we tried to talk to them about what they were believing, they would get angry with us, and we would end up fighting all the time. And there was arguments, and it was a very hostile time. It was not fun for any of us. There was lots of arguments, lots of just, it was just a mess, basically. Yeah. So we thought this family therapy was going to help, that they were going to bring the kids in, blah, 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 blah.
You were in practice, you needed to, yeah.
We talked to this woman about our childhood, about our families. You know, we did a massive family tree on both sides. We talked for such a long time and in depth about why we found name changes difficult, and why it was why names were so important for us in our religion. Mm-hmm. You know, we basically opened up to this woman and told her everything that we were feeling and everything that was going on for us. Unbeknownst to us, she was having conversations with my eldest. We've no idea really what was going on there, but it turns out that our eldest was telling this therapist that we were not affirming her he him pronouns, but she'd never ever mentioned that to us. She was always they them. She'd written this whole blurb on her door about how we were to address her and why, and you know, big they them letters and everything, and it's still on the door to this day. One day we come into the session. I've missed a whole massive part that I've forgotten about Sandyford. We had, when all this started, I had contacted Sandyford and we were sort of on the waiting list. They went to an initial appointment. We'd spoken to them beforehand and saying, look, we don't want you pushing our children down an affirmation path. We don't want you just affirming exactly what they're saying, and we want things, you know, discussed and looked into a bit deeper. My eldest has autism and we have a query over the middle, and they went to the appointment and the middle was immediately fast-tracked to the gender clinic at Sandyford, and the eldest, they said, just needed some kind of therapy, but it was, they didn't feel she needed to go to the gender clinic from whatever it was that they'd said to her. But at that time, around that time was when the Tavistock thing happened. The
blew up. Yeah,
everything blew up in Tavistock and Mermaids, and we said, actually, we're not keen. We don't want to do this. We don't think it's a good idea. So we're going to find like private therapists for them. So we got them off the Sandyford list. It actually happened that the appointments they gave us, we initially couldn't make because they were one of our festivals, and they'd made another appointment that we couldn't make. And then that's when we said, look, I don't think this is going to work. We've found out all this stuff about Tavistock and the Mermaids, and frankly, we're a bit freaked out and we're not interested. And they sent us an email trying to downplay it and say, you know, it's not a big deal. This is what we think they should do. And it was signed he him, and I just thought, no, no thanks.
So how did you get to the point where the social services came on into the picture?
So we went into the family therapy session one day, and she said to us she was going to send us to social services, and we said, well, why? What's going on? Why are you doing that? And she said, well, it's for not affirming your eldest he him pronouns. And she said, and we said, but she's never asked us to do that. And she said, well, we're doing it. It's you're being referred under emotional abuse, unintentional emotional abuse for not affirming. And we had her confirm that that's exactly what it was. Unintentional emotional abuse for not affirming he him pronouns.
Yeah.
That was the end of our sessions. We had to keep sending our eldest to this woman because we didn't want to like cut off her therapy straight, like out of nowhere. We had to wait until there was something else that we could send her to. And it's very difficult in Scotland to find therapists.
And also, if she had these other comorbidity, mental health issues, I'm presuming she was had crisis anyway, and needed the support. So you couldn't just sort of cut it all off.
Yeah. And we didn't want to cut it off because then she would have even more ammunition against us.
Mm.
One of the major problems was that the appointment that my eldest was going to was always on the same day and always when she was missing double maths. So she ended up missing so much, and they wouldn't change the appointment. They were very difficult about it. They wouldn't change it to another day. They wouldn't do anything. So we had to stop it on those grounds as well, because she ended up failing maths and not
the mandatory subjects. Yeah.
So she had to like jump down a level. She was doing Nat 5, she had to jump down to Nat 4, and then she ended up only doing arithmetic because she'd missed so much of this maths and she didn't know what she was doing. She just couldn't. Couldn't.
So where are you at now then?
Well, we were left in limbo for 7 months, waiting to hear 7 or 8 months, waiting to hear back from social services, and we got a cursory phone call. We told them, that she's got her own therapist now. She's in private therapy, and they were like, "Okay, that's fine." And we're like, "Well, what would you have done? What would you have offered if we didn't have that?" And they said, "Oh, we'd probably just refer you back to CAMHS." And we're like, "What? How was that of any use?" Because it was CAMHS that sent us in the first place. So, I mean, obviously we were not a high priority. They've got way more important, difficult cases in social services than not affirm him. But it was very stressful. We, as a family, we just completely shut down at that point. We didn't talk about anything gender related. We barely talked about anything, and we've clawed our way back from then, working on our connection with our kids, working on, getting our relationship back on track. We've kept gender ideology out of it as much as possible. I'll occasionally send some articles, but they're never taken very well. So
it's still a major part of your lives.
Yeah, we still feel that we're sort of walking on eggshells, not really able to fully just be ourselves and be a family, because it's always in the background, it's always over our heads. And our middle is still a bit confused. She's still.
You've also got this transition period now where you're getting into adulthood, where obviously
this is what works massively, because my has transferred herself back to CAMHS. She's got the doctor to refer her back because she wants to see that same therapist again. And our concerns is, well, she's 17 now. She's probably going to be fast tracked onto the adult kids services.
Right.
And that's a massive worry.
And do you know how long the waiting list is in Scotland for adult services?
I've not a clue. I imagine it's years.
Right.
I'm hoping it's decades.
A bit of time. That's what Anna and I were just talking about. Did you have any thoughts from that? Because there's obviously a lot of similarities, Anna, in your story.
Yeah, I've got a few points, and I'm gonna try and talk about it without getting emotional. I'm really sorry, Evie. It holds you hostage as a family, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you're like, you have to, you're on tenterhooks, whatever the phrase is. Because you're just scared of doing the slightest wrong thing. It's like being in an abusive relationship of some sort. But with the threats of, especially if they've self-harmed, so you know that that could end up happening again. Or my daughter self-harmed. She ran away once. I think I put that on Twitter when she went missing. But she ended up running away to the non-binary girl that I mentioned before, to her house, because her dad was affirming, and the mum who didn't live with them had taken my daughter to trans pride without me knowing, and my daughter had been encouraged to go no contact with her family, and that she could get LGBTQ housing. And I think at this point she'd just turned 16. So that was obviously by the Glitter family, who had encouraged that, as well as other people, other kids' parents who should know better than to be meddling with other people's kids. We also had the whole TikTok thing. My daughter, she went through so many phases. This was from lockdown onwards. She went through so many phases of, you know, the TikTok, what were they called? The TikTok trends, basically.
The algorithm feeds you, doesn't it? You know, you start.
Yeah, everything. She went through every single one of them, and some. She went through, like, we had a week or two where she thought she was schizophrenic, and that she was seeing, hearing people. Yeah.
The Tourette's one.
Yeah, we had Tourette's. We had OCD, where she went and told her friends that she was worried she had OCD. At this point, I had to have a camera in the kitchen to see who was nicking all the munchies at night. So, like, I was able to go back because she told her friends, who had then emailed school saying they were concerned about my daughter and her having OCD, because she said she had to keep washing things like however many times, and school said, do you want to keep an eye on it, because they didn't think that she had it. Anyway, but so obviously we looked back at the camera and we were able to say to my daughter, look, you're washing a mug once, like, you don't have a problem. And she then decided to say, oh no, it's because I knew that I was on camera. I was like, no, that's not how it worked. But anyway, so we had that. There was a regression phase as well, you know, with the dummies in the bottles.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of the rest. There was so many. And
the multiple personality disorders, the other one.
Yeah, loads of stuff like that. And one time I ended up having to call an ambulance for her because she was that hysterical one night, because she had woken her younger, or not let her younger sister go to sleep. And so I'd confiscated, what was it? One of those octopus teddies that goes inside out.
Yeah.
That she'd suddenly become really attached to and hadn't been attached to before. And she went absolutely nuts, woke all her siblings up. I had to hold the octopus like above her so she couldn't get to it, and they tried fighting me for it. And was hysterical, screaming and wailing, I want my toy octopus or whatever. This went on to about 2 a.m. from about 9 p.m. and it got to about 2, I think, and we rang for an ambulance. Ambulance didn't come. By the time we got a call back, she had fallen asleep. But that was just completely out of character for her. I mean, she had behaved like that when she was younger, before she'd started on medication, which is obviously another issue, because with her wanting to appear as a boy, ongoing issue from when she was younger, she was always on the smaller side, and she needed quite a high dosage of Concerta XL. But because she was on the smaller side, we had to really watch her weight to keep her up to a decent weight, which was like lots of good calories and stuff like that. When she realized that she wanted to bulk up and appear more as a male, or hide her female body, she realized that she needed to come off the meds because it was suppressing her appetite. And she sneakily stopped taking her medications. And so I think that had some kind of input in her behaviors then as well, obviously. But then she just came off it completely, and then CAMS discharged her because she wasn't on meds. We didn't get any kind of therapy or anything. The only thing they did do was recommend COOF, which is obviously,
Yeah, that's dreadful.
yeah, I didn't know that about that. I was like, COOF. I can't say it because I can't say THs.
Yeah, I
COOF.
mean, if people don't know what that is, it's basically
Yeah.
they have sort of some low level, barely trained people who may be able to offer some support, but the majority of it is basically peer support, and it's full of gender ideology as well. And basically anyone can sign up into it and give one another advice. One of the safeguarding issues I think with it is that if anyone can join up, then predators can also join up and talk to children,
Yeah.
because there's no way of mandating or restricting who is accessing them. So yeah, COOF is a big problem as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think that's got some people wanting to take action on them at the moment, I think.
Mm.
With pronouns were always changing. And we also had social services involved from when she ran away, who secretly encouraged her to change from her sixth form of the good school to a different college where her pronouns would be what's the word? Where people would use her preferred pronouns. And this social worker told us that we should compromise by using her pronouns. This was after we had read the CAS review and I'd sent it to the social worker, and her just telling us to compromise. No. Luckily, we had a meeting with her manager, the social worker's manager, before we got downgraded to early help again. And I pointed out a few of these things to the manager, and the manager seemed to get it and said, well done you for fighting for your daughter. Because you could see in the Zoom meeting that she'd gone from talking about my daughter as he, and then talking about teenage hormones, and then going on to female hormones, and then you can see it going in her head that she then goes, well, she's a female, so she's got teenage girl hormones going in her body, and you can see she kind of peaked on the Zoom meeting, and then she was like, yeah, well done for fighting for your daughter. And the social worker that we'd been dealing with obviously wasn't very happy with that. But I mean, that was nice, and I hope that more people in social work can kind of work things out like that, and maybe explain things like that to other social workers, because the gaslighting on families is just ridiculous.
Mm. I mean, it's both of you obviously have had this very shared experience with schools, with the internet, with CAMS, with social services, now with this trajectory into adult services. So, what are your thoughts about the future, and where you're going next? What's going to happen, and what's your fears? Evie, do you want to kick us off? What's your fears now?
With the eldest, I guess my main fear is being fast tracked onto the adult good services, and just that continuation of affirming this notion that she's born in the wrong body and that she is a boy. And it's so difficult in Scotland because everywhere they go, they are affirmed. They're called by their other name, and they're called he him. And I don't see how any of this can change when adults are continuing to do that to my children. We've worked so hard to get our relationships back on track and to get our family back on track, and it just feels like it's going to be dismantled whatever they do and wherever they go.
Is your eldest on the at a point of leaving home, or going off to university or college or anything?
No, not this year. She's applying to colleges for I guess for August.
Right.
She's not made any, she's not planning to leave home.
Anna, I mean, you're obviously not living together at the moment, but what's the next stage? What's your for
I I think now, after she's been staying over every so often, I feel like, well, I don't know if this is wishful thinking, but I feel like she is starting to kind of see things. Um, but I never know for sure. So I am just kind of scared that she will go through with something that
Yeah.
she will later regret because her brain isn't fully matured right now. And we all do stupid things. And this just happens to be the most extreme thing that anyone could do. And there's like even less safeguarding around this than there is on like getting a tattoo or
Mm.
whatever. Like my younger daughter, she can't get a belly button pierced because she needs like proof of ID and someone to go with her. And
It's
but
just ludicrous to think that the minute they turn 18, that's them adults. They can do these things. What
this isn't like anything
the day
else.
before when they were 17, they're still young,
Mm.
Yeah.
still not, their brains are still not fully formed, they're still kids, even at 18. It fills me with dread and horror.
My daughter talks about having kids as well, and she hasn't quite connected the two that it would prevent her basically from being able to have kids. And she is in a good relationship right now with a really good I say man, but he's like her age. So I don't, but he's lovely. She seems a lot more calmer now. So I'm hoping that she kind of focuses more on her life choices than what's going on with all of this. And there has been a little bit of talk of her moving back in with me. And I'm kind of lucky where I live now, it's nowhere near as full on indoctrinated as where we used to live in London. So I feel like if she did move in, I feel like that would be her saying that she kind of does want a little bit of a way out
Mm.
because it's so different here. But she won't say to me she wants a way out. But I mean, this is why pronouns and stuff are so important because with her being told by everyone else him and all this, I know my daughter and I know that she's not wanting to completely go with it, and I know that for a fact, and I know that any surgery would scare the living crap out of her.
Mm.
And I know that she's not stupid, but I know that she's also got a lot of vulnerabilities that are making her lose her common sense and ignore her own kind of intuition on like warning signs and things like that. She's completely lost all of that, and I need her to rebuild that, and I want to be able to help her. And I think she knows that I'm here for her with all of that. But there's also the fact that it's having a massive effect on my other kids, like you, Evie. Um, my 11-year-old son is autistic, and he still calls my daughter him
Mm.
because he wants to make my daughter happy.
Mm.
Um, but he's also at risk himself because he found like anime, and um, he also somehow got into all the same kind of fashion styles that you see all the boys pretending to be girls and men pretending to be women wearing. So I had to rein that in. It's so hard trying to find that kind of middle ground between how he used to love dressing up as Rapunzel because he adored Rapunzel and dressing up in this uniform of predators. Um, that's the only way I can describe it. A uniform of predators that they're trying to put onto kids, especially boys, to make them appear exactly the same as themselves.
Mm.
Um,
Is he getting
yeah,
Oh, because he's at that
Hmm?
age as well at school. He'll be getting quite a bit of that in PHSE and RSE.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a blessing in disguise right now that he hasn't been in school since August because we moved house and he's got an EHCP.
Right.
So we've only just got his school named on that. So I've been able to kind of control the internet and stuff like that. But it's when my daughter comes over, instantly back to he, him, and
You
stuff
might,
like that.
you could try and get it put in his EHCP that you don't want him to have any gender ideology at all.
Yeah, I've got a review in 3 months. So I will do
I
that
would,
gender
I would try
diversity.
and, I would try and put that in if I was you and see if you can get that. Um, and
I
have,
get my girl just taken out of when they're doing the RSHP. She doesn't go in at all
I
for those.
didn't know you could do that with an EHCP. I'll definitely do that if I can do that with an EHCP. Um, but yeah, this is the part of the debate that no one's really talking about when it comes to preferred pronouns. It's there's so many implications from just that. Like my son at his old school, he had a Senko of all teachers who was a woman and said she was a she, they, MX, whatever her name was. Um, that
mix.
was confusing in itself. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's rubbish. Um, but th that's if you give someone who you like every so often, you'll call them with the pronouns of the opposite sex. That gives them the go ahead to then say to whoever they're talking to, be it someone in real life or be it a community online, which will inevitably involve younger, vulnerable people. It gives them the go ahead to also expect that off of other people. It will give the go ahead to people who already want us to use preferred pronouns for everyone who wants us to then keep preaching it, especially when it comes to things like schools or healthcare or um it's I've got a whole
I mean,
list.
I'm in an agreement because I believe that as a movement, we're trying to represent something. And essentially, if there are people who say, you know, for comfort, I'm going to use preferred pronouns, as opposed to standing for something that they say that they believe in. For me, I feel like I want to role model my position in the movement because basically I know that children are being punished on a daily basis, and getting you know, suspensions and punishments because they're refusing to use pronouns of teachers or
Yeah,
pupils or whatever. So basically, if they're getting punished, or if women in prison are getting punished and time added to their sentences, then why should I be having using comfort pronouns because I'm in a luxury position? I feel like I need to be role modeling, you know, myself, you know, what I feel
exactly.
even because I'm
That's
in a movement which is saying I'm standing for something different. You know, I'm pushing back against gender ideology as a religion, and I'm saying, no, I don't believe in this religion. I'm a non-believer, so therefore I'm not going to use these, you know, pronouns, and that's why I feel that they're important. I'm standing beside those children or those women in prison or whoever it is who's, you know, who I'm just sort of, you know, being principled, I guess, you know, and also autistic people particularly find this incredibly difficult to you know, they say what they see, and so if you're, you know, making them do this kind of mad swap, it's just incredibly difficult for them, and then they get into
it's
trouble.
unfair. Yeah, with their rigidity as well, I guess it's hard for them, but they will like with when they do use the preferred pronouns, they'll have come to a certain kind of conclusion as to why they should use that, and then telling them they can only use it sometimes without any reason as to why that would be that makes sense in their head, because it won't make sense in their head. There'll be no logical reason for it. It's just more confusion to our kids. I've got like, hold on, I've got a list of basically, I've come up with this thing called the perverse pronoun pyramid scheme. Okay. Um,
Right.
someone uses a preferred pronoun just sometimes. Do they actually even care what they're affecting? Okay, so there's school, there's healthcare, which also includes CAMS and social services, putting stuff onto us as parents, trans activists already wanting to push stuff, it gives them the go ahead. There's the LGB and the cot in the ceiling. There's trans widows. I mean, domestic abuse, domestic violent relationships. Why would you do that? I can't understand it. We want women to be seen, and here's some of us just saying, "Oh no, what are you talking about? Your husband's a she." Like, no, I see, a lot of us see what's actually going on, and I'm sorry, but I'm not here to gaslight women in this kind of thing. They also, I said it the other day, it's the social transitioning is not a neutral act. I feel like it works for adults equally, but on a different way. Like if you look at trans widows relationships, if we give the man the pronouns he wants, that is detrimental to the wife and the children. It's things like the kids, the schools, like I said, but then there's also the ROGD parents, the siblings of the ROGD kids, who will be getting messages from their siblings who I say they're the wrong sex, and also from schools because of the trans activists who have been given permission, the healthcare, it all interacts like a pyramid scheme. So
yeah, it does, and it's important for us to, stand and try and support you with all of these traumas that you're describing, because the family unit is fundamentally, being destructed by all of this madness.
So many different angles,
Exactly.
And we've already mentioned the autistics.
I think
I just don't think it's a good enough bargain just to call a few good ones by the pronouns, preferred pronouns that they want.
Can I ask you both then, because obviously this refers to some of the you've obviously learned a lot in the movement, and you obviously get quite a bit of support and friendships, etc. Can I ask you both what it's been like since you've kind of found your way into this, the side of the kind of you've obviously made friends and learned so much. What's it been like coming into this movement? Anna, do you want to start?
It's I'm not the person I was. I was in a completely different place before. I'm gonna cry. I was in a completely different place, and now that I can speak truthfully, I'm not going to stop. I just need to get the doorbell. But I really appreciate the whole turban.
I'll come back to you. Go and get the door, and I'll Evie, what's it been like for you?
Well, in the beginning, when this first started happening, I started researching massively. So in 2020, and that's when I first sort of realized what was going on by learning from the TERF community. I found out who they were and what was going on, and that's what it gave me the strength not to go down the affirmation route, because I from reading up and reading what was going on at that time, I also spoke to Stephanie from Transgender Trend, and she put the fear of God into me, scared me half to death by telling me all this stuff.
Right.
But it gave me sort of the strength to be able to say, well, no, we're not doing the pronouns thing, and no, we're not doing the name thing, because it changes things so massively. Once you're on that path, it's very difficult to come back from it. I did in the beginning, I used their names that they wanted. On and off, I would try it out, because I thought, if it's causing them this much anguish, would life suddenly be so much easier and better for them? But actually, what happened was we compromised at the school and allowed for their other name to be used. They just said it was a bit benign. It was a bit like an AKA, also known as thing. But the second it happened, their actual names were gone. That was it for good. but it didn't make them any happier. It didn't really change things. They were still self-harming. They were still confused. They were still, you know, caught up in all of it, and it wasn't making things better for them.
Mm.
But because Scotland is the way it is, we've basically in our home become like this little haven of reality. It's the only place really where
Yes,
where
Scotland is particularly bonkers,
hmm,
isn't it? For schools policies and
everywhere they go, they were affirmed he, him. They were asked, and it was just a given that you just did it. And it made things really difficult for us.
I mean,
It's really difficult.
we've spoken
What?
we've spoken a few times. I know, and are you in Bayswater or our duty? I can't
Mhm.
remember.
Yeah, both.
In both, okay. So you've kind of found quite good support and camaraderie. I'll put them up for other parents maybe who might stroll upon this video, and you know, they're two incredible organizations who can offer peer support to parents going through this sort of.
Mhm. Bayswater do like a weekly Zoom. It's often I can't get to it just because it's during bedtime and getting everyone to bed, but I sometimes join it. And our duty as a as a WhatsApp group that's very very accommodating of people who just want to open out and vent and say however they're feeling, and everybody understands because we're all in the same boat. We've all got such similar stories starting off in the same way, children with either autism or trauma, past trauma, and these kids are being these vulnerable kids are being pushed into this ideology, which is an adult agenda.
Mm.
And so yeah, it's good to have these parents where you can just say what you need to say and nobody like
They judge you
nobody
for it.
bats an eye
Mm.
or judges. Yeah, everybody understands because they're all in the same boat. It's tragic. It's
Um,
hard sometimes to see other people's stories, but you know, I think the more people understand what's going on for families
well,
around this
we're not out.
situation.
We're not out of the woods yet, and certainly, I mean,
No,
obviously, you two, you'll be into the adult services, and we're in terms of the children, we're waiting for the full cash review to come about, which will obviously kind of be too late for your you know, where you're at with your children, but
Scotland was supposed to be doing their own version of that, and that's never happened. It's been 4 years since they said they were going to.
right.
They're just dragging their heels.
I know that from the information I have, I don't hold out a huge amount of hope for the cast review, I have to say.
No.
And look, I just want to say a huge thank you to both of you for, you know, agreeing to have a chat today. And I've really, it's been great hearing your stories. And I wish you all the very best for you both and your families. And you know, I'm sending you all of my very best wishes. So, you know, thank you very
Thank
much.
Thanks for letting me waffle.
You're very welcome. We'll speak again soon.